Okay, so I'm gonna talk about this Lil Pump, kind of interview that he does on, I think it's Bootleg Kevin, but if I'm wrong, I'm going to kind of speak on that kind of situation and then correctly name the show and then disclaimer. So if you hear something before this, it's probably a disclaimer saying that I was wrong and I'm gonna fix this. So okay, so I have to kind of say this ahead of time because and it's kind of my thing where I have to, no matter if I use a term or if I use a word that a person uses, or they were the first ones to say it. I normally, and myself, I try to reach out to that person or contact them about it, just so that is clear. Hey, I know that this is kind of the way that that you kind of coined the term, that you kind of made that phrase up for it. And the phrase I'm going to be using is 1985, the 1985 effect, which J. Cole's song on KOD is 1985, where he talks about the situation. The 1985 effect, it was on BlackySpeakz. He has a YouTube channel, and he just kind of do the same thing I do, reviews on hip hop topics, but he does it throughout the week, and that's kind of my thing. I kind of hold myself to a weird accountability. And I probably shouldn't, but I hold myself to weird accountability to where I'm always respectful of people's things and they should give credit. So this is kind of me just giving credit to that before I talk about the Lil Pump situation in the interview, which we'll get into. And if you kind of hear me kind of phrase my things a certain way, or arguably kind of go into this conversation and sound a little biased, it's just I'm gonna explain my biases and when I start the episode, but I just want to point this out before I get to that. And I'm gonna link his the 1985 effect video, and I think he did a video related to the same topic that I'm doing, so I'm going to link both of those videos in this description. And I do want to give credit to them. I do want to give credit to BlackySpeakz. Just make sure I'm saying the name right. If I'm not, I'm gonna hold myself accountable and fix it when I get done. But and I think y'all deserve me when I'm at my full energy, so I'm doing that. So when I'm sorry for all the but I hold myself to a weird accountability where I have to reach out to that person before I do it. So that's not a comfortable thing for me to do. So we're gonna get into it real quick. Let's see if we have any sponsors, and I'll get right into this episode that might be a little long.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Okay, so recently Lil Pump was asked on an interview if he thought that J. Cole was right in some aspects of Lil Pump falling off, right? And I think this question, if J. Cole was right about predicting his fall off, right? And I think to some extent you have to look from a third person perspective on what you consider the fall off, right? And we could argue the fall off for many different things, right? We could base it off of album sales, promotion. We can do it off of numbers. We can do based off of numbers. We can do it based off of crowds. We can do it off of streams. We can do it off of a lot of different things, right? We could do it off of so many things that I think if we were to try to narrow it down to like what specifically, we kind of wouldn't be able to figure out like what that number is, right? And so he says he hasn't fallen off; he's still rich. And I think my thing is, just because you are rich doesn't mean you're that you haven't fallen off, right? And I think that's where this kind of disconnect comes in, and this 1985 effect that BlackySpeakz talks about is the concept of like this guide that J. Cole, when he made this song, he was making a guide for rappers to realize that they were at some point the money will slow up, because J. Cole in the song says soon the money will slow up because the people, if you keep riding trends, and then the money will slow up, right? Because some people have to, because at a certain point your audience will grow up, right? I think that's the actual order of the line, right? But it makes you think of what would be an artist's mindset to go, yeah, I'm going to release these songs in this order and hope that I'm doing well, right? And I say the fall off of any artist is very from their very own perspective, right? And to some degree, that's kind of true. And I say I'm giving BlackySpeakz his credit because his definition of the 1985 effect is the most simplest definition because of the way he crafts it, the way he presents it. It's very it's easier to explain than, because if you ask me what the 1985 effect is, it's J. Cole eventually telling these, well, exemplary, it's a guide, but it's more of a plan that eventually, no matter what art that you fall for, at some point your audience is not going to feel you as much as they once did, and then it's going to cause a lot of problems with sales, with revenue that your passive income that you were making. That's why I say that BlackySpeakz definition of 1985 effect is the simplest effect, right? And it's more, you can understand it more, and it doesn't seem as much of a thought that you kind of have to rearrange the way that it's said and to make it I'm just saying it's a very nice definition. It's a solid definition. It's a simple definition, and it's understood by all. Because I don't think I could simplify that definition of 1985 effect. So, while that's being said, okay. So he said he doesn't think J. Cole was right on him falling off, and I think this is very perspective, right? Because the perspective of Lil Pump saying he hasn't fallen off is, I think he's still 6 million monthly listeners, right? And that's not a bad number, right? But then we know streams aren't everything. We know follower numbers aren't necessarily everything, because it doesn't equate to actual fans that will pay money and all this other stuff, right? And to some extent, I've never seen Lil Pump shows being promoted, so I've never been to a Lil Pump show, so I can't talk about the audience size. But for some reference, Smoke Perp and Lil Pump, I think they're both Juice WRLD X. I think they were all part of the SoundCloud generation that came into hip hop, right? That came into hip hop. They didn't have contracts. They were all from like SoundCloud, like that SoundCloud era of making it famous, right? And so there are certain things that they didn't have to do, like sign contract deals. They were doing their own promotion beforehand, so it wasn't like a very different change if they did sign labels or not. I'm not sure if Lil Pump is signed to a label. I think he at one point was. But you don't have to worry about certain things at certain numbers, right? And then people will argue that when you get to sales, that's when the numbers really matter. And to some extent, I think that is true. Like, I think if you ask me, for example, if you have 45 million people that follow you and want to support you and support your music, right? And you're mainstream enough where you're getting promotion, you're getting on rap TV, you're getting on these Fridays list of songs or albums that are coming out, right? And you're not blackballed like Tory Lanez and other stuff you take into account, right? And you sell 45K first week, which, if you're not a signed artist, is not bad. 45K a week, if not being a signed artist and not being mainstream, is great numbers. But if you're signed and you're not doing over 50,000 first week, it becomes concerning of how much longevity you will have left in rap. Because the idea is, In rap, you have 3 to 5 years. You have your first year you come on, your second year, and your third year either you fall off or you make it to your next year. Which it's hard to duplicate talent or passion after you make X amount of dollars. And I think that, and to some extent, I think that's the whole point of J. Cole's 1985. He's just saying at some point, right? At some point, that money is not going to look the same. So don't spend it on jewelry, don't buy it on cars. Now, and to some extent, I get it, right? Like, you think you're hot, you think you're going to have this money forever, but we've seen it where artists don't last that long, and then when they, I mean no offense when I say this, okay, Cyrus, Smoke Perp, right? No offense to them when I say it, but Smoke Perp is a great example. His crowd, when he went to a show, was very small. It wasn't that many people, but I think if you look at Smoke Perp, he has, 12 million followers, right? Which, that's what I'm saying, it doesn't really equate to how many people will actually buy your tickets, which is very concerning, because if they won't buy your tickets, they're not helping you in a way, and I get it, everything not about tickets is not about the money, but that's probably what's going through the artist's mind. Plus, many artists take advances to release albums and release music, but when you look at it, like, Lil Pump, when he drops music, is there, but he drops a big name celebrity, so people don't notice that he's on that list anymore, right? Like, he's still talked about, but if it's not music wise, not many people are talking about him. And so this comes to J. Cole's point, is that at a certain point, you keep riding trends, you're gonna run out of ideas. You're gonna run out of trends at a certain point. No matter the things that you do, right? It's gonna eventually get to the point where that's no longer viable. For example, Tekashi 69, he got himself in some legal trouble trying to ride a trend, right? And so either you get yourself in legal trouble, or you get to this spot where you're not in any legal trouble, but you don't know what other trends are riding anymore because you're out of that generation. And they've had this conversation before, which is why I don't, like, I get it. You're supposed to think you're the best artist when you're an artist, but truthfully, I think if you're Lil Pump, you're saying, well, I'm doing more than 1 million monthly listeners, but I'm only selling 40,000 actual units of my music or my albums or my songs, and that may concern you, right? But you may not be looking at the full number and still think, okay, well, I still got longevity in this game, so I can still make investments and stuff like this and still be rich. Like, as he said, he's still rich. Like, that's no problem. But at some point, that money will slow up. That's why you got to invest in certain things that aren't necessarily rap related. And I think that's all J. Cole was trying to say. But it's a weird thing, right? Like, and okay, so I'm gonna put you like this. There were people that are worldwide famous, like Taylor Swift, J. Cole, Drake, Kendrick, Rihanna, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Kanye, that are globally famous, right? But if you're famous in the state, if you're famous, and that's a lot of rappers from the United States or the states don't understand, is that there are places outside of the United States that your music might not get played, or there are regions that not necessarily you're not going to feel your music. That's why when he went to Japan and no one noticed him and he was just like a normal citizen, it's because, they might not listen to you in that country or that region, right? Because your music doesn't affect them the same way it affects in the United States. And he did say he just makes music to have fun, which is fine, but at a certain point, if that money does slow up, what is your next investment, or what is your idea? And to some extent, I get it. You think when you have money, you think, oh, it's the best thing, I'm never going to run out of it. But rationally, reasonably, you have to think about it. That's why you see so many artists, when they hit a spot where they think they're at a sweet spot, they go make record labels, so they have more money coming in and they can do advances, and they still have money coming in passive income, which passive income is always good. See, I sound like a marketing major, or I sound like a marketing exec or a financial bro, but it's just don't always put your marbles on the basket, because if you do, roughly, you might not be, you roughly won't ever stay rich. The rich only get richer because they stay rich and have different ideas about it, which is why I think when he says that he doesn't think he fell off, I get it. You're supposed to think you're the best, but I'm not sure if that money is looking the same to say he doesn't think he fell off. And I get it, and I said this when I released the Kanye, when I said that if you're worried about sound bits, that sound bit will get you a lot of publicity because it'll be talked about, but that doesn't equate to streams, and streams don't equate to money and units being sold. So I don't know if you could write as many streams as you want, but will it make you money in the long term and make you an advancement? I just don't see that being viable, and that's why I say he's not at his fall off yet, but he could soon be facing it. 6 million streams is not that shy of a million, right? To where Taylor Swift is like 49 million, Drake might be 100 million. What I'm saying is, streaming wise, there's some numbers you can fall from. 6 million is a hard number to say, okay, I'm financially stable enough to be able to fall. Because once you fall past a million, checks are going to look different. And 6 million is not that far away from 1 million as, say, 49 million. Right? So, I don't know. Like, I do think, in a sense, he's right to think, okay, I'm financially stable enough where I don't have to worry about that. But I don't know. Like, I don't know his money. And don't get me wrong, I don't know his money. I don't know what his payments are, his investments, his mortgage. I don't know what none of that is, right? But looking from a perspective of 6 million, that lifestyle, whatever you're paying, that 1 million mark is so nearby. It could happen overnight. You know what I'm saying? It could happen in 30 days. It could happen in 60. And then what's your backup plan, right? Like, and that's, I think that was J. Cole's whole point in the 1985 song, and I think that's what BlackySpeakz was trying to talk about in his 1985 effect that many rappers didn't seem to follow, because it was a guide, and many rappers are falling into that guide and didn't realize that J. Cole was open before the guide, because J. Cole, as you said, he is the middle child, because he is the middle child between, and when I say middle child, I mean he had at this time, right? It's Jay-Z, Usher, Lil Wayne, Rick Ross, right? Birdman. I don't know how you feel about Birdman, anyway. Cameron, Jadakiss. You have so many people that are above him that are successful, making money. Kanye, despite, what's happening now. Rihanna, he's had so many people ahead of him that made money outside of music that are rich for years. Lil Wayne's been rich for, 20 years? Jay-Z's been rich for more than that. Nas, he might not be rich, but he's well off. J. Cole, he's rich. You know what I'm saying? And at one point, he had a Range Rover, he had security, but I think he's changed that whole perspective where he doesn't wear jewelry anymore. He does bikes around New York City. But what I'm saying is, and it's so weird. It's so weird for him to say, I don't see it. But looking at those numbers, I don't know if you can fall anymore and be financially stable. And that's the thing. If you're financially stable, you're okay. If you're not financially stable, when you hit that 1 million mark, it's gonna be a rude awakening, and that's how many rappers go into debt. Which, and then itself is just because on the flip coin, when I say I consider Drake, Kendrick, J. Cole the middle generation, because the other people that there are the big dogs too is JID, 21 Savage. Kaz, SZA, Bryson Tiller, like they are the big guys to them because they're smaller artists. They're just starting off, right? So Lil Pump, Pop Smoke, Juice WRLD. We're doing this off the year that they got famous, right? The year they got famous, not the actual year, right? Because if we did that, a lot of people would be mixed together. But I don't know. Like, can you say you successfully didn't fall off when you're making less than 6 million in streams, and it could go down to 1 million, which would then still be concerning because I don't know how much money he puts out puts out a month, but it's very hard to see it depending on how I know how many rappers do it. They're very with their chains, glasses. They want brand names and stuff like that, and you end up running into this thing like, can I pay off my debt or will I be in debt? Will I go bankrupt or will I be okay? And I don't know. I think you could consider this the start of his fall off, which I don't know if you can call this his fall off because he's not getting promoted. Any of his albums and his songs aren't getting promoted. So I don't know. You run that risk of it, and I don't believe he's blackballed like Tory Lanez. So then you just run the risk of, am I going to be able to do the stuff I needed to do because I have like 1 million monthly listeners? And then again, I said 6 million, but 6 million didn't equate to his 45 units sold for his week. So it's just, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing numbers wise, and it's you can do some mind gymnastics and think maybe okay he can get away with it, but I don't know. Looking at it from a financial standpoint, I don't know if he has enough. He might not even have. He might have passive income somewhere else that's making him still rich, but I don't know. Riches don't stay forever if you don't manage them right. So that's all I'm saying. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. As I said, these episodes might be a little longer just because of the topics I'm talking about, which are completely my decision to make. So I don't know. I just hope you enjoyed. Okay.